Hey everyone, welcome, founders. I'm here with Mike, and he is the founder and CEO of the Ripple Center. And today we have something very special and planned to talk about getting into social entrepreneurship, talking about socially responsible startups and ventures and training the next generation to make an impact in the world. We know that these days, young people are not they don't want to live to work, they want to work to live. But if they are working, they really want to work in startups, organizations, companies with brands that are making a difference. And I've seen statistics on this, and I think it's a really interesting time for a founder like Mike to get into something like this. So I thought it'd be really great to have a conversation and also talk about how maybe the rest of us founders can become a lot more socially conscious and participate in what you're doing. Mike, welcome. Thanks for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Ed. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. So let's start off. What is the Ripple Center? You say it's an educational ecosystem for social entrepreneurs. We got that. What does that mean for you?
Sure. So, in a nutshell, the Ripple Center and our first big program is going to be a fellowship program, which is an 8.5 month accelerator program for young impact entrepreneurs. Like you said, there's so much information out there. There are so many surveys and statistics out there on what's going on with Gen Z in particular and how they want to spend their time. One I saw was from Worth.com that there's 40 million Gen Zers, our age group that's presently 9 to 24, who plan on starting social impact businesses. Right. The problem is, though, guidance, customers, capital are just not available to them. So what we wanted to do was establish a fellowship that provides curriculum, business planning, industry leaders, mentors, potential investors for a select cohort of Gen Zers to launch a social impact enterprise. I've been having this conversation a lot lately with people, and hey, entrepreneurship and whether it's for profit or nonprofit, this is how we run our lives, our economy, our capitalism is here to stay. So saying that we need to get rid of it or change the system entirely is just not realistic. What I say is everybody's entitled to make as much profit as they want and can, but not at the expense of people on the planet, right? It is if we want to continue to enjoy what we have and enjoy each other, we have to find ways to take care. My philosophy is we protect what we love. I also believe that I am what I do, and I know that I love people on the planet, and that's kind of how the Ripple Center was born.
Okay. You're saying, great, capitalism, let it thrive, make as much money and profit as you want, but how we do it and also what we do with all that profit, that's worth a conversation. Let's try and figure out different ways to do that. That's what you're saying.
Absolutely,
100%.
absolutely.
Great. So let's go through, some of the things that you're saying. So we're saying a revolution entrepreneurship is needed now more than ever. Absolutely correct. You can't ignore the trends that are happening right now, and also all the opportunities. A lot of people complain about the younger generation. They complain about the millennials. They complain about Gen Z, but statistically, they are the most empowered and believe they can change the world and want to change the world. So on one hand, us boomers, well, I'm not exactly a boomer, but I've got, kids coming to that age. They have been told you can do anything, you can change the world, which can lead to sometimes a sense of entitlement and all those things that we complain about. But at the same time, this sense of, yeah, I can change the world and I want to change the world. That's what you're kind of grasping onto here. And you write, as human populations and the consumer economy continue to grow, the natural resources that sustain us are becoming more fragile and finite. The only antidote is to create new systems that benefit people and the planet long term, Mike, my question, how did you get onto this? Like, what was the journey, the vision? Like, what was the seed that got you started to the point where you're going to do something crazy? Like, you changed careers to do this. Like, you're all in on this
All in.
vision and
All
mission.
in.
So walk me through what goes through your mind to get to this point.
Absolutely. And it's funny, it has been such a circuitous path to getting to this moment, but everything that I've experienced has been a movable feast. I have brought it with me, so that it is all part of the Ripple Center program. As an undergrad at Rutgers, my passion, what I wanted to do since I was a kid, was television. And I had gone to Rutgers to study broadcast journalism and marketing and public relations, and went into some internships experiences with some major networks, and unfortunately recognized at an early age how sexism and racism were built into just the culture of the industry. Not, unfortunately, I don't know how much has changed. It's definitely, we're more aware of it. We're having more conversations around it. But we still need, self-motivated, passionate, disruptors to keep making waves to get things better. So I essentially graduated from school going, oh my gosh, now what? I had a cousin who happened to be a financial planner and said, Mike, we have a new office down in central Jersey. Why don't you go there? They'll pay for you to study, get your Series 7, and you could go into financial planning. So, of course, from broadcasting potential, I went, got my Series 7, and was selling mostly municipal bonds, tax-free bonds, but also, just got a really good understanding of economics and just financial information that I didn't get when I was in school, which of course is its own issue. But was there for a year. I happened to be one of the last rookies standing in my class, because not so much that I was the most knowledgeable, but because I just knew how to speak with people and treat them with respect and help them understand what they were looking to do. But lo and behold, I kind of said, you know what? The other issue is that as a lifelong environmentalist, I also was putting people's investments in things that kind of were the antithesis of my values. And at that time, which was really the mid to late 90s, there weren't a lot of, options in terms of sustainable investments, and there was no real focus on that. So again, I said, okay, wonderful experience, but I want to move on to something else. And I started my own publishing company. I did, the first book was the unofficial guide, the Rutgers students' unofficial guide to college. It was based on all the bests and worsts of Rutgers College, top 10 lists, what's the best major, what's the best place to party, what is the worst pizza on campus, things like that. And I used my public relations skills that I had gotten and my marketing skills. It turned out it was the fastest selling trade book in Rutgers history at that time. Went on to do 4 more schools, and Ed, what was great was this was back in the late 90s. I was planting trees to offset the environmental impacts that I was having on printing books. Because I say, and this is part of the whole package of what does social impact look like? How are we making sure that we're looking at people and planet through the lens of all of our business decisions?
Okay, so 2 things before you continue.
Go on.
I just want to highlight. One is a plethora of domain expertise, but also entrepreneurship. To be able to shift careers like that, they are completely lateral shifts. Like, it's not, you weren't like knocking down dominoes that made sense. You just moved into something completely different. So entrepreneurship, obviously in your blood, the courage to say, I'm willing to take this risk and do something on my own. The second is you lived it. It's one thing to talk about it, but you actually lived it. And to me, that's a great attribute for a founder. That's a great story to tell. It's not just something you care about it enough to put it into action. So the fact that you're in publishing and you're planting trees to offset and you've thought that through, absolutely amazing. The third thing I think is really important is clearly you saw a gap when you created that Rutgers Guide to College. You saw a gap of information and you went in. So you're solving problems as you go. You're just not willy nilly. Like I know a lot of social entrepreneurs that care about something and then they try and shoehorn something, to have it make sense. And it's easy to say, I'm going to give 10% of all my funds to this and that. But you're a problem solver. So you're actually, attaching and connecting all these pieces of the ecosystem together and creating opportunity for yourself as an entrepreneur. So not only did you do Rutgers, now you've got that feather in your cap and you're doing other universities, you're making money. How then, okay, so continue on the journey to where you are the founder of the Ripple Center.
Sure, sure. And in addition to, and I appreciate what you pointed out, was also community building. It's a lot about networking, community building, and making sure you hold on to those contacts. Because I have individuals, and I'll get to it, that are part of the Ripple Center that I probably met at that time. Um, so from there, again, I was loving it. I did 4 more colleges, unofficial guides, and then said, you know what, this is fun, but it's not quite exactly what I, see myself doing long term. So I ended up going to another small publisher, also in New Jersey, and this individual, the publisher, was looking for sales and marketing, and I did that. And to also supplement income, I was working with youth groups and with young people. And I had always said that after a successful career in television, I was going to retire and go into education. I said, why not? Let's kind of, fast track that a little bit. There was a teaching university down the road from where I was working. And I said, I'm going to go back and get my teaching certification. It was a post-baccalaureate program, so it was just 1.5 semesters, including student teaching, and stepped into the classroom and absolutely fell in love. Now, this was with 5th graders, and again, what I love about startups.com is the availability of mentors and people that have expertise. This was something that I really lucked out with my cooperating teacher at the school I was teaching, because her first questions to me were, she said, tell me 2 things you absolutely love to do, or, that are meaningful to you. And I said, television or filmmaking and the environment. She goes, well, then let's figure out a way to incorporate those into your student teaching. So I was able to make movies with the kids. So instead of, it's English class, and, it was kind of, hey, as opposed to just let's do some creative writing stories. It was Halloween. I said, okay, we're going to do creative writing and do a Halloween story. Oh, now you're going to get together with a group and you're going to take your stories and combine them into a script. And now we're going to film them. I actually have a student from that year, and I'm going back to 2001, that ended up doing horror films 15 years later because of that experience. So, the influence that you are able to have as an educator is so huge. But the ones that were my mentors in education were so valuable, because at the same time, we were also able to do a lot of environmental education, which when I got my first job in the public school system, again, I had a principal that said, Mike, I brought you on to do what you do as long as you're hitting the standards. And I used to do these projects where I'm like, let's figure out how to create social impact businesses. I had the experience of doing, business plans. I had the experience of some of the science and the background of the environment. We began to talk about social justice issues back in the very early 2000s. So, I was getting a really good taste of the influence of giving up control, but kind of, guiding the students on how to do these things and present them to the public. At one point, a few years in, when I was switched to iMovie and was teaching other teachers how to use iMovie in the classroom for this purpose, we had this big environmental festival, and it was environmental films, and it was projects and information. We actually got a letter from Al Gore's office congratulating the students on really focusing on these issues and being future change makers.
Let me point out another thing. I think this is important for other founders to hear. You're very fortunate. I used to be a school teacher as well in junior high and high school, and I constantly wrestled against the bureaucracy, the red tape, just the rigid academic system to try and be innovative. So the fact that you had a teacher empower you that way. So I can see where the Ripple Center, the roots are, and where this is going. But one of the things that I want to highlight is that you were willing to go into a system, embrace it, learn about it, go with it, versus stand outside the system and throw rocks at it and say, this needs to change. When you speak to changing a system for education, an ecosystem for social entrepreneurship, you are speaking from frontline experience. And I think that a lot of founders don't realize how impactful that type of experience is when an investor asks for domain expertise, the ability to say, I'm actually going to go work inside. I know founders that will go and get jobs not at the innovative tech companies, but at the dinosaur rigid companies, even though they know this is not where they want to be. They're going to learn that system so they can go through that idea maze, if you will, and all the reasons there isn't change, there isn't innovation, how the incumbents are operating so they can disrupt it. You're a living example of doing that. And I think that's really important for anybody interested in working with you and, your fellows, which we're going to talk about in a moment. When they look at your experience, they say, Mike has got the real goods. He's just not talking about it. Just like you planting trees, you've actually been inside the system and you're familiar with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I was talking to my sister just today, and, what I also did was came to accept this was a journey, right? It wasn't something that I wanted to try to quickly jump in and perfect overnight and move to the next thing. I wanted to really absorb the experiences and soak it in. And also on the other end, learn how to be a facilitator. Again, one amazing project. And it's also not just the students you're working with, but their families as well. And as well as all of your colleagues and the administrators. One great project I remember doing in the public school system was teaching the students how to make their own eco-friendly bath and body products. And we talked about the science behind the chemicals and the products and things that we're in. We have porous skins, the things that people are putting on them every day. And then after investigating it, I brought in all the ingredients to make the same products, but with natural ingredients. I had parents calling me saying, Mike, you are costing me a fortune because my child is making me throw out every single thing in the medicine cabinet right now. And I said, well, then my job is, I'm doing a decent job. But, fast forward, Ed, I, began to think while I was doing that, is there a such thing as a green school? Or is there a thing that combines entrepreneurship and environment and ethics, with education? And I was able to come across a small independent school. At the time, it was only 5 years old, and the umbrella of the curriculum was sustainability. And it really, there I had another mentor, Mark Bedron, who unfortunately passed away within the last couple years. He also served as president of the New Jersey School Board Association. And he was so passionate about how we treat each other. The school had a system of virtues. And originally, the idea of sustainability wasn't even there. It was about how do we treat each other as human beings. And then, they came to realize, well, if we're not having a really loving, solid relationship with our environment that sustains us, how could we possibly treat each other with respect and dignity? So they then, created this campus with LEED, gold, and platinum buildings. I got to be part of the beginnings of the planning for a living building. And for 5 years, just, really got to dive into environmental education and just understand the impacts of what we are doing to our planet. And at the end of the day, even, the idea of climate change, okay? I'm a believer. I absolutely have seen the science. I've heard from so many people. But when I would get pushback from others, I'd say, you know what? Let's do this. Let's take climate change and put it over here for a second. Would you agree that what we need as humans is clean air, clean water, and clean soil for food, clean food? Well, if we work on just those systems to try to make it a healthier place for ourselves, and then the climate continues to do what it's doing, and we say, oops, we were wrong, but look how much healthier we are, it's still a winning situation. That being said, as I, again began to think like, okay, I know that this exists, but it's not still the program that I'm looking for. I moved over to another school and I was working as their director of sustainability, also teaching 5th through 8th grade science, and moved up into administration. And my notebook, which I don't have in front of me right now, dates back 12 years. It says the Ripple Center. I bought the domain name 10 years ago. And I just knew, okay, I'm going to keep working on this. I'm going to keep working on this. And about 3 years ago, it finally clicked. And originally, I was thinking of it as a gap year program, but I also, again, having taught all sorts of social justice issues, particularly in the last decade where they've really been, more out in the open, and, the things that we deal with in the news, I said, okay, if I'm going to do a gap year program, well, who's going to be my clientele? It's going to be people who could afford it. And I don't want that. I want this to be something where there are these incredible treasures of young adults around the country right now who might not have this opportunity to immerse themselves working with, other facilitators and mentors, which I'll explain what that means in a second. And I want to make sure I provide this to them for free. This needs to be a scholarship-based program because I want the diversity of the cohort to reflect the diversity of the United States.
Okay, let's break down your program then. What you're saying is you're finding these students wherever they are, you're scholarshiping them so they don't have to pay a dime, and then pretty much they're going to be in a cohort together, and you're going to incubate / accelerate their social entrepreneurship. Did I get that right? That's how it works.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
And how did you get your first fellows?
Sure. So once I made the decision after 20 years in formal education that I needed to immerse myself in this full time, because as any educator knows, it's not a 9-to-5 job by any means, right? So I had to actually leave in order to have the time to fully do this. We started a program called Ripple in Residence at first, which was last January of 2021 through June. I found 12 of my former all-star students that were at the time in 5th through 8th grade that were now 18 to 25 years old. And I met with each one over on Zoom, talked to them, offered them stipends, based upon how many sessions that they could show up, because I knew that this was, I wanted to respect their time. This was going to be a business. And I hired facilitators who would go through all of the components of the program and want to hear feedback from them from this, Gen Z age range. Once we had it sorted out that it was going to be a fellowship program, that it was going to, be over 9 months, I brought on one of those residents, and I hired him to work with me to do the admissions process, and wanted to make sure that it was the most equitable, admissions application that we could come up with. And it was based upon demographic questions, but also some short answer questions and a couple longer essays. Brought on a whole team of volunteers that were going to be on the admissions committee. We trained them on how to score and evaluate these applications that were rubric based. And then I spent so much time just trying to get it out there that the Ripple Center was now open for applications for August of 2022.
Okay,
now, this was back in October that we started this.
Okay, important principle. You didn't just say, here's the program. You actually created an MVP. You funded it out of your own pocket. You got market validation by talking to your users. I'm just using startup language right now. and basically it's your minimum viable product. You built something small, you put it out there, you got feedback, and then from there it formulated into the current version of the product that you have right now. But battle tested, validated, feedback, etc. I'm sure you had, like, how many people did you have apply versus actually accept?
Sure. So, and did it through a whole bunch of platforms that colleges use to connect employers and employees. It was a low number of applications this year, and I get it. There's other programs that are out there that are much more prestigious, that have been around for a while. So it was in like the 30s or so applications, but when you talk about putting out the right information and the right feel for what this is supposed to be, all of the applications that we received were right on par with the type of individuals we wanted, that were passionate about wanting to make change through building an enterprise. And also, I'll tell you, of the 13 fellows, more than half of them come from households of $40,000 or less, right? We have 8 females and 5 males. We have 10 young adults that identify as BIPOC, as biracial or people of color. And I've talked to other individuals who are running fellowships, going, "How did you do that?" Like, you know how long it takes to try to get that type of authentic diversity, and I'm like, it's more than that. We have these 13 individuals that we ended up doing 17 interviews out of all the applications that we accept and scored, and offered it to 15. One of them, respectfully declined because she had accepted another program, and one just never heard from. So we ended up with 13 that are from all over the country, and one idea is better than the next. There are a couple that are still, they know they want to do this type of work, but are not quite sure, and that's okay. Because the way that the program's going to run, Ed, is we start in August. I'm flying everybody into Newark, New Jersey. We're going to spend Saturday, August 6th, doing team building activities that evening in Newark. Sunday, brought on a facilitator who does mindfulness and self-care as a CEO, and does these things both with young adults and corporations, and does team building activities as well. Because one of the things, and I'm sure you could appreciate, is that I could go online and find Business 101, right? I can kind of, like I did when I was doing the publishing company, I read a few books and taught myself how to do this. But there are other things that are so important, such as, first of all, the interaction between one human and another, but also understanding that this isn't just about a product, getting it out there and making money. It's about, you are about to embark on a journey that is going to take its toll on you. So how are you being really aware of when it's time to take a pause and take a breath? How are you making sure you're taking care of yourself so you can take care of the employees you have or the customers you have? And then, of course, there's also the environmental components, right? What is the impact, first of all, that your industry typically has? And how are you asking questions that are going to help you change it? So needless to say, they're coming in Saturday. Sunday we're going to do programming. Newark, we're going to go out into the field and meet other impact entrepreneurs, some farm-to-table restaurants. Monday we're going to be in Brooklyn doing the same. Tuesday in Manhattan. Already have companies lined up that are going to be working with us. So, for example, and here's I'm going to throw out a solid example. I knew that when I was starting this business, I had to practice what I was going to be teaching. And I did probably 3 weeks worth of research on what bank I was going to use. And I settled on Amalgamated Bank, which has a history of impact investing and looking at minority-owned businesses. Amalgamated Bank is going to host the fellows. They're going to have some of their individuals from both the banking and from investing side talk to them about what impact investing in banking looks like. And they're hosting a lunch for us from a restaurant that's run by immigrants who make all of their native foods. So, I want them to also be able to begin to experience, begin to build their own networks and communities. And then I'm going to fly them home. Many of them are full time students, a few of them are young employees. And then starting when they get back home, every week for the most part, between 2 and 4 times a month, they will meet online, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and they will begin to work through building their business plans. Now, some of them have business plans, but it's going to be enhanced by the speakers we bring in, which is we're referring to as a facilitator. So a facilitator is an individual who's volunteered for an hour. And so, for example, when we get to budgeting, Jennifer Budoff, who's the budget director for the District of Columbia, will come on and speak to the fellows about budgeting tips, and they will be able to interact with her and ask her questions. When we're talking about environmental stewardship and how do you create, if you're doing manufacturing, how do you create spaces and places that abide by these rules? Well, Denise Coogan, who is the environmental director for Subaru of America, is coming on. But she also is volunteering to be a mentor. So each of the 13 fellows, by the beginning of October, because we want to get to know them before we just find mentors and pair them up, are going to be paired up with an individual mentor, which means Denise will give minimum of 2 hours a month to whoever she's mentoring, and they will just get together on their own time and talk about the business plan or questions. And this will happen through the end of March, when the students, the fellows, now have the opportunity to live pitch their business plans. And we will bring on venture capitalists and anybody from the community that's been a part of the program.
Okay, so it's clear that you got this all pretty thorough, which is fantastic. Now, just for the sake of time, I want to make sure that we're covering all the bases, because I've got a kind of important question to end with. You right here, our mission to mold social impact entrepreneurs through experiential education in order to disrupt existing systems and create a better world for people and the planet. We talked about that. And then we talked about, it's a fellowship program for 18 to 24-year-olds. They were able to apply. The applications are closed for this cohort. Mm-hmm. I'm going to just shout out, we don't have time to get into each one. I'd love to hear all their stories, but you got, Justine, Sumer, I hope I'm saying all these names right. Veronica, just shout out to you. I hope all of you see this and that we're behind you. Startups.com community, we're in support. We've got Oscar, Chloe, Stephanie, Rachel, Brenda, Alexander, Mark, Grayson, Sky, cool name, another Chloe here. A big shout out to the mentors. Many of them are facilitators, mentors. Many of them are part of the startups.com community. So, just scrolling through people that we recognize and that we're working with, which is fantastic. James, talk to James on a regular basis. Hytham, of course, Malika, etc. So again, can't shout out everybody, but my personal appreciation, I know Mike appreciates you, but I want to make sure that all of you get a shout out there, which is fantastic. Kudos to you, Mike, for building such a powerful network. Your business model, I want to highlight this, is by donation. Mm-hmm. Okay. So as we move from concept to reality, we implore potential donors to consider the deep impact that your contribution will make on generations to come. A donation to Ripple Center is an investment. This is my call to action to everybody who's going to watch this. TheRippleCenter.org, that's the URL, is an investment in changing the culture of commerce and shifting the way that business is done. I'm going to make sure that I make a donation. So just letting everybody know, put the money where the mouth is. How else? And we can end on this question, Mike.
Sure.
At startups.com, us as founders, you've been a great contributor to our community. And I know we've got founders who are helping you. How else can we help? What would be your request from us as founders together at startups.com?
Sure, absolutely. Well, first of all, I mean, I don't know if you can tell I'm passionate about this or not, but I would ask founders to think about how they are building their businesses, how they can, right, look through the lens of environment and human equity and dignity, and make sure that they're thinking about those things as they're building their business. Because the reality is more and more individuals, not just Gen Z, but other generations are really thinking about the power of their dollar. And it's similar to like casting a vote, right? How I'm spending my money is endorsing what I see as our future. And I think a lot more, many more customers are becoming savvy to that. So, think about, if you're going to build a long-lasting, sustaining business, you want to make sure you have these, tenants incorporated into your plan. As far as ways to, directly contribute or give back to the Ripple Center, there's a few things. We're going to be looking for more mentors. This is going to be a program that we're going to we will be expanding in years to come, trying to create, cohorts in different time zones. So, my job right now, I'm also continuing to build a big community for future facilitators, for future mentors, and there's ways to reach out and apply for that. And you said, Ed, I'm all in. Like, I am all in. I am in my home for 2.5 more weeks. I'm closing on it. I put it up on the market because I knew that, as great as it is to sit in front of Zoom and talk to you, I need to get out there. I need to talk to people. So starting in August, when the cohort comes in, begins my trek across the United States for the next year. I will be starting a YouTube channel called Ripple on the Road, where I will be interviewing other impact entrepreneurs, people that are doing amazing work, in the environmental and social spaces as it applies to for-profit and nonprofit businesses. So if you want to know what my schedule is and you want to get interviewed, I just want to build a big community. We could turn on the news and we see so much bad stuff that's going on. I tell people all the time, turn the news off, meet your friends and neighbors, and you realize it's way better than you think. And if we build these types of communities that are, looking to be disruptors and change makers for good, amazing things are going to continue to happen. And I know there's so many individuals and organizations out there doing this that I want to promote it. Also looking for, corporate sponsors and partners and things like that, that align with the mission that we have.
Fantastic. Well, it was great to hear. I'm looking forward to catching up with you on your future exploits, seeing what we can do to happen. I'm going to be your advocate out there, and I'm just going to tell people, hit that donate button. Just, forget about corporate and all this stuff. Just hit that donate button to all the founders out there first, and then consider becoming a mentor. Talk to Mike, and I'm going to put all Mike's information. Let's just say the gauntlet has been thrown down. Let's make a difference. This is the stuff that we dream about doing. You're living it. We're going to live vicariously through you. So Mike, thanks for sharing. And again, thank you for being part of the startups.com community. And we're going to do some great things.
So happy to be part of this community. Thanks, Ed.